Welcome to the Week 6 NFL Power Ranking Show here on bravesbirdsdfs. This is one of the best places for PGA, NFL, MLB, and NBA news, and of course DFS. If you don't know by now, I'm Walt. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to my channel. Yeah, I know it's week 6. I know I should have started this a while ago. It's something that I've kind of had on my mind since I first started my channel early, I think in 2023. So I did a small little thing about power rankings, but I say, you know what, let me create a little formula, model, whatever you want to call it. People are really loose with the term model nowadays, so we're just going to call it a formula. For my weekly power rankings. So for my power rankings, I am going to look at 4 things, and then from there, I'm just going to spit out the power rankings. I'm not going to make any post equation, adjustments. And the number one thing that I look at when it comes to my power rankings are wins. It doesn't matter whether you win 20 ugly games in a row. If you win 20 games in a row, I believe, if I'm doing the math, you will be a Super Bowl champion. So wins are definitely the most important thing when it comes to power rankings. Now, number 2, the second most important thing when it comes to my power rankings are who are the teams that I would not want to play in the playoffs at home, or in this case on the road. If I were the GM and I had to go to one of these teams, who would I not want to play? So you can think of the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead Stadium. By the way, they won tonight. You don't want to play them. You don't want to play Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills in Orchard Park in Buffalo. You don't want to do that. So to me, that is the second most important thing, because at the end of the day, whether it's the teams or us as fans, our goal is we want our team to lift that Lombardi trophy and be the Super Bowl champions. The next thing I look at, so third out of 4 elements, is the strength of victory, because not all, in the standings, yes, all victories are the same. But if your team is beating a bunch of bad teams, that's really not testing them for who they're going to play in the playoffs, because we know that the majority of the teams out there, especially the bad teams, that's not who you're going to be playing. You're going to have to beat Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. You're going to have to beat, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. You're going to have to beat Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. So if you can't beat that caliber of team, it's kind of saying something about you. And the thing that I weigh the least, but is still important, is the strength of schedule, because some teams, especially this early in the year, the strength of schedule can fool you. I mean, we've had teams that have started 5-0, and just based on their record, you start to say, okay, this might be a Super Bowl contender, but 5 games later, they're 6-4 or just 5-5. They lost 5 in a row because their schedule gets a little tougher. All right, so we've gone over what I look at when I'm making my power rankings. So let's get into it. And my number 10 team in my power ranking are those Detroit Lions. Yes, they're on bye this week. They're 3-1. They're in the top 10, once again, 3-1. So they have a good record. Another thing that's really high on my rankings is I wouldn't want to play the Lions in Detroit in the playoffs. Say what you want about Goff. He's made it to the Super Bowl. He's won in the playoffs. He has a lot more playoff wins than some other quarterbacks that are out there. We know Dan Campbell is a good coach. We know that it's just a good team, just so many weapons. You have Gibbs, you have Montgomery, you have St. Brown, you have Laporta, and that's just the players on the offense. So definitely at number 10 this week, I'm putting those Detroit Lions. At number 9, I'm putting the Washington Commanders. 4-1. So there are only 2 teams right now that are 4-1, and the Commanders are one of those teams. They finally have that electric quarterback that they've always, they haven't had a quarterback like this since RG3. So the best quarterback that they've had since RG3, they're putting it all together. And honestly, I would not want to play, Jaden Daniels and those Commanders in the playoffs. All right, so number 8, this might be controversial. I'm not sure about it, but I'm keeping the Pittsburgh Steelers in the top 10 at number 8. I know they've lost 2 in a row. I know it's probably apparent that Justin Fields has lost the job. He never really had it. Russell Wilson got injured, but it's becoming obvious that they're going to pass the torch back to Russell Wilson. But with those Pittsburgh Steelers, they have had the third highest, strength of victory. And with TJ Watt and that Pittsburgh Steelers defense, I would not want to go to Pittsburgh and play the Steelers in the playoffs. All right, so number 7, we have the Buffalo Bills. Yes, Buffalo has had a hard time winning over the past 2 weeks, but we're just going to keep it simple. As long as you have Josh Allen as your quarterback, and then you have Cooks, and then you have Kincaid, and you have the coaching that they have, as long as you have that, and then you have to play, a team has to go on the road to Buffalo, to Orchard Park, and play a game in the playoffs. As long as you have that, they're just a team that if they sneak into the playoffs or make the playoffs, and definitely if they're the higher seed and you have to travel, to Western New York, the Great Lakes, lake effect, snow, Buffalo area, that's just not a recipe for a visiting team unless you're the Chiefs and your name is Patrick Mahomes. Not a recipe for winning. All right, so at number 6, this is probably higher than most teams. Most people have this team ranked, and it's not because this is Brave Birds DFS, but at number 6, I do have the Atlanta Falcons, and I have them there because they've had the third toughest strength of schedule. They've already played the Chiefs and almost beat them. They played the Eagles, and then they played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we'll talk about them soon. And their strength of victory is also top 5. And honestly, if I were another team, I wouldn't want to go to Mercedes-Benz Stadium and play them in the playoffs. I know you're like, yeah, Kirk Cousins. We know everything about the Kirk Cousins, history. But at the same time, if they can get that defense to tighten up, we saw what they could do against the Tampa Bay Bucks on Thursday Night Football. And speaking of the Bucks, yes, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number 5, ranked higher than the Falcons, who just beat them. And here's the reason why. The Commanders have 1 loss. Who did they lose to? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Detroit Lions have 1 loss. Who did they lose to? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers pushed the Falcons at home literally to the limit. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the toughest strength of schedule so far, and they have the best strength of victory. All right, so at number 4, I know people who are just straight purists would want to put them at number 2, but I have to put the Vikings at number 4, and for 2 reasons. I don't think many teams are afraid to play Sam Darnold in the playoffs. Obviously, Justin Jefferson is amazing, and Sam Darnold's had a good start to his year, but nobody's afraid of them in the playoffs. And also, they've had a relatively weak strength of schedule. But that being said, 5-0 is 5-0, so I have them at number 4. At number 3, I have the 4-1 Texans. You have CJ Stroud, and CJ Stroud is the reason why, the Texans are actually higher than the Vikings, because I sure as heck would not want to be in Houston, playing CJ Stroud. If you had to ask me, would you rather play CJ Stroud in Houston or would you rather play Sam Darnold in Minnesota? I'm gonna play the Vikings over that. So the Texans have a top 5 strength of schedule. Their strength of victory isn't very strong, but once again, they have CJ Stroud and they've won 4 games. At number 2, I have the Baltimore Ravens, and if you have Lamar Jackson, I know he hasn't. I mean, he's 2 MVPs, and he's been the favorite, and he's been at home. Everything is aligned and lined up for him, but they're still finding ways to win. Their strength of victory is top 10. Their strength of schedule is top 5. And as long as you have Lamar Jackson, that is not a team most teams want to play in the playoffs. And number one, it didn't take a model or any kind of equation. I could have just told you this that the Chiefs are the number one team in football. Their strength of schedule and their strength of victory isn't very impressive, but they find a way to win. And as long as you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, if you're the Chiefs, oh yeah, Andy Reid at coach, you're good. So, anyway, this is my first countdown video. Let me know your thoughts. Feel free to leave any comments, but otherwise, go out there and win that guap when you're playing DFS.